Hello and welcome back to J Museum Trek Travel. This time I'm in Springfield, Missouri on a touring the Fantastic Caverns. So come along and enjoy the video.
Yeah, and feel free to come down here. You can walk down here and take pictures.
Okay, that's a cute. I saw that picture of little Jeep trailer.
All right, you guys enjoying the tour?
Oh, that was a good tour.
All right, you guys guess what this is.
Something to heat the cave, or
Actually, it brought electricity to
what should
the
it?
cave. So in 1887, when hardly anybody had electricity, the cave did. This would bring electricity to the cave and the information center. And we don't have a fire going. Typically we would, just for looks, really. But they would start a fire in here, and this tank would be filled with water that would create the steam. The steam would run through these two pipes and build so much pressure that this piston back here would move up and down. That would make this wheel turn, make the belt turn. And again, in 1887, this generator would come to life, and that's how the cave and information center had electricity. It was so uncommon to have electricity that nobody in Springfield or St. Louis had any, and only a small area in Kansas City did. So locals from hundreds of miles away will come just to see the Edison invention and not necessarily the cave. So we are going to head on in. It is a very comfortable 60 degrees all year round at Fantastic Caverns. At the first stop, we will be getting our picture taken. Yes.
Is the opening, was it always like this, or was that
No.
made?
No, it was made. And actually, the original entrance to the cave, and we'll talk about this throughout the tour, but the original entrance is where we exit the cave. And I'll get to show you guys the original entrance as well. So, but yeah, no, they kind of blew this out back where the original entrance was. They actually made a bigger entrance because this one was very tiny. And they actually made it, not so people could get in and out of, but because they needed a bigger space to put the piano through during, in the 1920s when they had the speakeasy in the club. So and just real quick, I kind of I'm on a time limit, but when you guys are done here, if you guys want it, we do a scientific tour. So we talk a little bit on history, not a lot. So when we get done, if you guys go up in the information center, there's like little posters on the Jeep, on the tractor. There's a poster where you guys were sitting. There's one on the opposite side, and in between where those flyers are, there are QR codes on each of them. So there's 5. And if you have a Samsung, or newer Samsung, or an iPhone, and you open your camera and you point it right at that QR code, it'll bring down a drop down. You click on it, it'll play like a 1-minute video, and it'll tell you some of the history. Whatever that poster's about, it'll give you some information on it. So, all right, here we go, guys. Sorry. On the way there are 2 low spots. They will both be on the driver's side, so I'll shine a light in those areas and just remind you guys to watch your heads. Alright, so the first low spot will be right here, guys. Watch your heads. And the second low spot is a little bit lower, so please watch your heads right through here.
Good. Oh, it's dark.
All right, so welcome to the Twilight Zone. So this is called the Twilight Zone because this is the last place in the cave that you would be able to see any outside light come through. This is that in-between place where the light meets the dark. When the animals were to come in here, this is as far as they would go because they know that there's no food source any further. So we came in as to what's referred to as the entry zone or the light zone. This again, the Twilight Zone. And as we can clearly tell, that is definitely the dark zone. So, in the 1930s, the owners of Fantastic Caverns, they would give 2 tours a day to try to earn money. But they also had about 6 or 7 of these garden beds throughout the cave. Does anybody know what you can grow inside of a cave? I'll give you guys a hint. Yeah, it's a fungus. Mushrooms, what you guess, right?
Yeah.
Good job. All right, so, yeah, mushrooms are a fungus. They require no sunlight, but they do require moisture. Did anybody get dripped on the way in?
Yeah.
I did. So, yeah, the cave is super moist, especially now because we got a lot of rain yesterday. So the cave's really dripping today, which is super cool. All right, well, this family made very good use of the resources. They would harvest their beds of mushrooms. They would sell them at the farmer's market as well as local restaurants, and that is how they financially survived through the Great Depression. All right, so I'm just going to show you guys something that we don't typically show. You guys are a small group, and I will, sorry, I'll show you for just a second. And I will probably take more time than I should and trouble about. And show you guys some things that we don't, like I said, typically show. All right, so for you,
Yeah.
so limestone is made up of, so the ocean that used to run through here, so when the sea life and plant life would die, it would go to the bottom of the ocean and turn into lime. That's what makes up the limestone. Well, this cave is completely made up of limestone, and so you get to see some of those fossils throughout the cave. So as you can tell, see that one? See all those little ones?
Oh, yeah.
Those round ones are the actual Missouri plant fossil, and don't ask me the name of them because I can never remember. Oh yeah, look at all those. That's a good one. And there's what is it called? I can't remember this. Not shellfish. Seashell. Yeah,
Seashells.
Seashell fossils. And since we are a small group, I will show you guys that the starfish fossil that's at the end of the tour. It's so cool. So, all right, so we're going to head on into the auditorium. As I mentioned, there's a lot of history that's happened here, but we're going to do scientific facts, and we're going to take a look at some formations. Breaks are wet. They're super sensitive. So let's talk about where formations begin to grow. So as I mentioned, the cave is made up of limestone, and that limestone is made up of those fossils. So those fossils are made up of what? Calcium.
That's it.
So when it rains, that rain will travel through the ground and pick up different minerals. Well, once it hits this limestone, it picks up the minerals from those fossils, and it's called calcite. So once that rainwater containing that calcite saturates the ceiling, it then begins to drip that water. And that's how it makes formations. Now, depending on what way that water drips from the ceiling is going to determine what kind of formation that it creates. So the first one we're going to look at is the most familiar. It's called a stalactite. You can remember that by saying that that stalactite hangs tight to the ceiling. If you look at the bottom of it, this is the only formation in the cave that drips all year round. So it is dripped to the ground and has formed a stalagmite. And you can remember that by saying that that stalagmite reached that stalactite one day. And when they do merge together, they then form columns or pillars. And I'll get to show you guys a column here after a while. Right next to that stalactite is a formation and looks a little bit different. Well, this is what we refer to as cave curtain or cave drapery. The way that the water drips in this case, if you can imagine holding an ice cream cone on a very hot summer day and it's melting down your arm, well, it'll melt down at an angle and then it drips off. Well, it's the same concept happening here. If you look at that limestone ceiling, there's an indentation. So that rainwater will actually move down that indentation and then drip off. And that's why that cave curtain is shaped the way it is. So back over here behind me, this cool stuff that looks kind of like lava running down the wall. This is what we call flowstone. And the way that the water drips in this case is it comes from that crack in between the ceiling and the wall, and it flows over that limestone, which is where it gets its name, flowstone. So when we see formations that have that reddish or brownish color to it, well, that tells us that it's picked up some iron along the way. The more pure white, the more pure calcite. All right, so the questions of all questions. How fast do these grow? The average growth rate is 1 cubic inch every 100 years. They grow slow. So you can only imagine how long it's taken this cave to form, let alone the formations. If we were to come back 100 years from today and look at this stalagmite, the only difference in growth that we would see is it's going to look like it has a fresh coat of paint on it. That is it. But to give you guys a better visual as to what that looks like, up ahead is a formation. It is the only formation in the cave that we know the exact years of, and it happened by an accident. I'll tell you guys about that when we get there. All right, so at the last stop, I talked about stalactites, stalagmites, merging together, making columns. This is not an example of that. This is actually a well casing. So in 1941, the owners of the land on the other side of this wall were building a house and they wanted running water, so they needed to drill a well. They got with the cave owner, did some calculations, every inch on missing in the cave. Well, what they calculated would be 10 feet on the other side of this wall ended up right here in the cave. And the exact moment they knew that was after they drilled 90 feet down and that drill bit dropped was 20, 25 feet. That was that uh-oh moment. So to keep from causing any further damage by trying again, they drilled 50 feet further down, and that is where they were able to get water for the well. Believe it or not, this well was active till about 3 or 4 years ago, and they capped it off. But when this formation was put in 1941, this accident, that is when that new formation began to grow. You guys look up there at the ceiling, see that vein-like stuff?
Yeah.
That is the start of cave curtain or cave drapery. They are 79 years old, and the longest one, they're almost 80 actually, but the longest one measures to be just over 3/4 of an inch in length, which gives that 1 cubic inch every 100 years a lot of credibility. But we're even around, let's say they're 80 years old, okay? If these tiny little cave curtains are 80 years old, and how old could these possibly be in front of us? I haven't worked here that long, but when I did go through training, the training book taught me a lot of great things, don't get me wrong. But they did their very, very best at guessing how old those cave curtains are. And their best estimate is that they are very, very old. So, when people guess, I'm like trillions of billions of years, I'm like, that's better guess than what I would guess anyways. So, all right, let me show you guys some cool things real quick. One. Up here, you guys see these little strings hanging down?
Yeah.
Those are actually, oh look, it goes all the way down. Those are oak tree roots that's traveled down to see us. So we went underneath the parking lot and underneath the road that you guys came in on. Before you guys go to leave, if you look across the street, not far off the street, look for a little electrical box. It's a medium-sized one. It's not a real big one. It's green or gray, I don't remember which, but it'll have an antenna on it just like that. If you spot it, you will know that you are 92 feet directly below that, and that's where we are sitting now. So I'm gonna show you guys something else we don't typically show people, but I'm into the fossil thing, I can. Fish, and that third one right there is a turtle fossil. So, all right, so we are gonna head on up to that wooden box, and we're gonna get to experience the different kinds of lighting that the cave has had over the years. You guys see this formation directly in front of us? Mm-hmm. As we pass by these formations, I want you guys to look between them and look back at it. It's super pretty. The color is almost like, it looks like pearls, pearl color. So keep an eye out for that as well. Move on up there. All right, so another thing, I'm gonna go way over time, but see this here? These were actually like stalagmites, and then over the many, many years that the cave was flooded, there's minerals in that flood water that have attached themselves to this. So no longer is it a stalagmite, we actually refer to this as cave coral or cave popcorn. All right, so there are two places in the world where you can experience complete blackout darkness. The cave is one of those, and we talked about the other, which is the very bottom of the ocean. We're kind of in a bowl that there were water flowing through here. So if you guys don't mind turning the lights off to our devices, we're going to.
So if you like this video, please hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, and hit the bell. Fantastic Caverns. If you
guys are free to walk around now. You guys will look right back there in that corner. That is an actual column, by the way. As far as color, it looks like water running down it, shades of tans or off-whites. Look at the beauty and detail of this column. It's almost 3D, the difference in the two. So today we do get to see exactly what Fantastic Caverns is made of. All right, so caves are underground water systems that drain into some sort of spring. So up ahead, we're going to talk about how the Fantastic system works. Surface, this is what we will call a sinkhole. Yeah, feel free to stand up, look over, whatever you need to do. Can you guys see the very bottom of that hole? That is a tiny peak at the lower level of Fantastic Caverns. So we are made up of 2 levels and around a total of 4 miles, 3 of which are down below. There are only a couple open areas of that lower level, one of which we will get to see up ahead at the next stop. It's a sinkhole about 3 times the size of this one. It's super cool. The other one that I know exists is outside of the cave about a mile from the spring. The majority of the lower level consists of about 18 inches in height, which means you have to belly crawl through it. Something I'm not real interested in doing. I think I might be claustrophobic in that moment. But, so let's talk about the recharge of the water. Where does the water come from when it flows through Fantastic Caverns? Well, about 3 miles away is the Branson Springfield Airport, and in between here and there are anywhere from 7 to 12 sinkholes, kind of like this one. So when it rains, that rain will go down into those sinkholes, and then it will travel 3 miles through an underground river system. It sounds difficult, but all that is it's a tiny passageway underground for water to flow. So once it travels the 3 miles, it will then enter Fantastic Caverns. It will travel another 3 miles till it discharges out of the cave. It will then discharge into Indian Springs, That is located directly behind and below that visitor center where we were all just in. From there, we'll go to Low Sauk River and then to Stockton Lake, eventually becoming drinking water. All right, so we are going to head on up to the next stop. It is one of my favorite stops when there's water in the cave. This time of year, there's not. When I started here 2.5 months ago, there was about a foot of water in there. But we'll talk more about that when we get there. But also, we'll talk about the cave life that lives here at Fantastic Caverns. You can stand up and look over whatever you need to do. If we were to access the lower level from here and go this way, we would crawl on our bellies for an hour and a half till we reach a room that the owners have named the Paradise Room. And the reason for this, because they made that crawl. They say that it is absolute paradise getting to stand up after crawling on your belly for an hour and a half. I don't think I could make it, seriously. Rocks. Not knowing what's ahead, like I would probably freak out, not far into it.
I probably would.
So, as you can tell, this creek bed is dry. During the hot summer months, as I mentioned, that's normal. The rain that we do get, the dry ground soaks up long before it could ever reach this far into the cave. So during the months like spring and stuff, when we get a lot more of that rain, you're going to find that water here in the cave. Question I get asked a lot is, does the cave flood? Yep. Last year, Memorial Day, that's what it did. Came up to this line right here, and it went all the way back into the auditorium. They say that it took 6 days for that water to get to a low enough level to start giving tours again.
Oh.
All right, so cave life. We have a Ozark cave fish. They're very tiny, about the size of a goldfish. They are blind. They are a pinkish white color if you're looking down on them. But if you were to take a flashlight and shine it directly through their body, they are actually so transparent that not only can you see their hearts beating, but you can see their lungs functioning as well. We have a blind transparent crayfish, also known as the crawdad. They're very tiny, about the size of a cricket. Then we have a salamander. They can grow to be about 3 to 5 inches in length. They're a pinkish brown color. A couple things happen to the salamander after being in the darkness for a period of time. One is that they will lose pigment and turn white. And the second thing is that salamanders are born with eyes. They can see. But once their bodies realize that they have no use for them due to the darkness down below, they will close up. But if they were to ever go back out into the light, their eyes would open back up and they could see again. I think that's such a cool fact. All right, so we have a eastern pipistrellian tricolored bat that lives here. Fantastic Caverns has never had a high population of bats. Last that we knew, we had 20 or 25 of them. I haven't worked here long, but in my short 2.5 months of being here, I have not seen a bat. They're not like your common cave bats that you might think of when you think of bats. They're not going to go rushing out of the cave when the sun goes down. We're not going to see 20 or 30 of them all clustered together hanging from the ceiling. They're very independent bats, believe it or not. So if we were to see any hanging from the ceiling, there might be one here and then there'd be one way down there. Not only do they hang from the ceilings, but they like to hide in the cracks inside of the walls, as well as the rocks at the entrance and the exit of the cave. The best time to see them is at the exit of the cave, about the time that the sun is going down, where they are trying to find dinner, which consists of mosquitoes and insects. They're very tiny. They are about the size of an adult thumb with a 6-inch wingspan. I've heard that they look like fuzzy chicken nuggets flying through the air. So, all right, so we talked about the cave life, and we talked a little bit about the water system. Up ahead, we will learn about those things just a little bit more, and then we will talk about how the cave was founded.
We're sampling here at the Spring that Drains Fantastic Caverns. These are some of our samplers. A spring is the drainage point for a cave system. What I want to do today is give you a look at the whole drainage system, and it's going to be a good day for doing it because we have had a lot of rain the past couple days. That's why the spring is so large. Water goes into the cave system through things like sinkholes and then moves through the cave and discharges here at the spring. The flow of the spring today is about 9,000 gallons a minute, and every bit of that goes through Fantastic Caverns. About 3/4 of the runoff water in the Ozarks moves into cave systems. We're a mile from the spring here at a vertical entrance into the Fantastic system. This is one of the most open sinkholes in the whole Fantastic Cavern system. It's so open, in fact, that walnuts that wash in here make it all the way through the cave. I could do without all the drips, I think, but that's the way the water gets in. And of course, that's not only does water get in that way, that's the way food gets in for the cave animals, and contaminants get in too. I believe the jeeps get in some way other than that, though. Off-road! Off-road! The cave is here because limestone can be dissolved by water. This piece of limestone weighs about 1 pound. There is this much limestone dissolved in every 1,000 gallons of water discharging from the spring today. You can imagine the enormous volumes of water and long periods of time required to form the cave. Basically, a cave is a drained spring system. Since caves are part of spring systems, storms can flood them and make them dangerous. This isn't your normal Ozark float trip. The fish, the crayfish, and most of the other cave animals are tiny, white, and blind. Although they spend their entire lives in the cave, they depend on the surface for their food. When contaminants come in from the surface, they threaten the life here. With cave systems, whatever goes down comes up. Pollution threatens all life. By studying groundwater and by working to protect its quality, we can protect the beauty of the cave and preserve our quality of life.
All right, so we're about 130 feet below the surface at this point. It's not that we have declined, it's actually that the hill we are in has went at an incline. So the rainwater doesn't reach this far down, and that's why we don't get to see those formations this far back. If we were to walk 150 feet past that projector screen, we would run right into a clay wall. That is where the upper level of Fantastic Caverns ends. So let's talk about how the cave was founded. In 1862, John Knox and his dog Juno were out hunting when Juno took off chasing a small animal and chased that animal right into a crack in the hillside. Well, after a period of time, Juno hadn't come out. Well, he couldn't find his way out because of the darkness inside of the cave. All I can say is John must have really loved Juno, because you guys will know what I'm saying when you guys see this tiny little hole that he crawled in. So he crawled just a few feet, at which point he lit a match. He discovered he had a cave on his land. He could stand up. That is also when Juno could find John. Once they got out, John found any rocks or tree branches, whatever he could find nearby, and he threw it in front of that entrance to the cave. And he kept it a secret from friends, family, and neighbors for 5 entire years. After 5 years, I guess John has some superstitions. I'm not sure what they were. All I know is that he had no interest in exploring the cave, but he wanted it explored. So he put an ad in the local paper offering a reward for somebody to come explore it for him. Well, when that ad got answered on February 27th of 1867, he had 2 big surprises. One is that not just a couple people showed up ready to explore, but 12 members of the Springfield Athletic Club showed up, geared up, ready to explore Fantastic Caverns. I'm sure he was even more surprised when he opened his door to find that all 12 members were girls. So, no offense, guys. My favorite part of the story is that Fantastic Caverns was first explored by 12 ladies. Their ages ranged from 12 to 28. That being one distinct fact about Fantastic Caverns, and the other being that it was discovered by a dog. But on the way to the next stop, I will point out on the right-hand wall where those 12 ladies actually wrote their names. Alright, so over here on the right-hand side, those are the names of those first 12 explorers. February 27th, 1867. And if you're on my right side, please watch your head as we go by this rock. Many reasons why either party fighting in that war would want to cave and dig these caves. They're warm in the winter, cool in the summer. There's plenty of room for storage just in this cave. Can you imagine the amount of soldiers and all of their stuff that they could fit in here? Plus that's right. But also, if nobody knows about them, which was one of the main things they wanted caves for, that would make them a really great hideout. But they would mine caves that had high populations of bats. There's a chemical reaction that happens when that bat guano hits those minerals in the cave dirt. So pretty much, there's a cave in Virginia where they had about 200 of these set up throughout the cave. I had a system. So this is what we call a hopper. It's also called something else, a leech maybe. the back of them, and they would fill up these hoppers. Then they would add a little bit of water and mix it together. Once they got a thick sludge, they would take that sludge and they would fill up a pot like this. Once the pot was full, they would take it to the outside of the cave, and that's where they would boil it. Well, they would just kind of let it sit and boil until everything was out of it except for this crystal-like substance that would appear around the sides and at the bottoms of these pots. And that substance is called saltpeter. So they would scrape the saltpeter out of the pot, they would crush it up, and they would add 2 other ingredients. They would add sulfur, and they could use one of 2 things, either the pot ash or charcoal. And when you combine those 3 together, you know what that gives you? Gunpowder. Now, who knew that bat poo was so explosive, right? So, during that war, if you were soldier fighting that war, there wasn't a lot that was more valuable to you. You know, the more gunpowder you have, the harder the fight, bigger chance of winning and coming home, you know, if you made it through. So, even though John didn't know what his cave consisted of, didn't know that there were a lot of bats here, I would imagine he was just trying to protect what was rightfully his, and that is his land, his cave. Because in the 1860s, during the Civil War, if they knew a cave existed on their land, they didn't come knock on your door like a friendly neighbor would ask you to borrow a cup of sugar. You woke up one day and they were there. Not to mention that, you know, back in the 1860s, there was a lot of different kinds of farms, but there were people had cattle, and, you know, raised cattle to provide for the family or even put food on the table for their family. Back then, the soldiers were on your land, using your cave, and they were raising cattle. They got fed if they were hungry, you know, and at the expense of you and your family. So, you know, whatever John's reasoning was behind keeping the cave a secret until he knew for sure that that war was over, my personal opinion is that John was a very wise man, because here we are, 160 years. I would imagine a couple things. One, that the cave probably wouldn't look the way it does had it been involved in that war. And 2, I would also imagine that all the facts and history that's happened here over that 160 years probably wouldn't exist to the extent that it does. So we're going to head to a room called the Breakdown, and we're going to learn a little bit about a Missouri earthquake. On the driver's side, watch your heads as we go through here. And this rock here is our famous Ozark Noggin Knocker. So watch your noggins.
Oh wow, great.
All right, so this room is called the Breakdown because everything that we see through here broke down from the ceiling. So many years ago, long before these stalactites were here, so anything this size or smaller didn't exist, including that stalagmite, this one, any of these, of course, and that one. So many years ago, the cave would fill up with water and then it would drain, fill up and drain. And this happened time and time again. Well, on 3 separate occasions, when that water drained, that's when the ceiling collapsed. So scientists tell us that the first time the ceiling collapsed is this area right through here. The second time is this space that kind of looks like a shelf. And then the third time is this shoe print area. Well, when that happened, believe it or not, this room as a whole, we're on the other side of the first stop we made where we got our picture taken. So this room as a whole is the strongest, most self-supporting room in the cave because it's now dome shaped. And it still remains that way today, although it doesn't appear that way. So let's talk about this earthquake that happened here in Missouri in 1811. It happened on the New Madrid fault line. This earthquake was so massive that if it was on a Richter scale today, it would be an 8 to a 9.0. It literally rang church bells from Missouri all the way to Boston. And as big as the Mississippi is, it ran backwards for 3 days. Believe it or not, scientists say that there's no shown evidence that that earthquake ever affected this cave. And the reason for that is because earthquakes affect the surface and we're in the subsurface. Scientists actually tell us that it is safe to be in a cave during an earthquake. But I personally decided I'm not going to test that theory. If there's ever one to come here, you're not going to find me in Fantastic Caverns. I don't know if this will show, but... Alright, so we're going to head on in to the Hall of Giants. We are going to learn a little bit... No, that's not where I'm going with that. I don't know where I was going. First tour of the day, I've been off one day and I forget everything. Alright, we're heading into the Hall of Giants. Just bear with me a little bit. I'm going to go in, I'm going to turn the lights out. I'm going to show you guys this super cool invention that those first explorers brought with them to use for lighting to see the cave. So then I'll take a walk around the room and we'll see the cave just as they did for the very first time. Yeah, so we go in here and look up. It's super cool. All the stalactites. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, pretty, yeah.
I live on 6 acres. Not that I care to be out there at nighttime, but it's kind of cool just to make one of these for my kids and go exploring. So this is what it was in the news articles that those 12 explorers brought with them. So this is a 1-gallon tin can with a hole at the bottom and the top where they put some baling wire so they had a handle. At the very opposite side, they made a bigger hole and shoved a candle through it. And this was a candle. This thing is so cool. Like, you can see the light that it sets off. Better than carrying around a single flame candle, right? So I'm going to take a walk around, and let's see the cave just as they did. I'm going to do what I do best, and I'm going to talk at the same time. So this is the last stop of the tour inside of the cave. We have one stop left after this. It will be right at the outside the exit, where we finish up, and I can show you guys that original entrance. That original entrance led them in on that side of the cave, right up there. So all of this is what they see for the very first time. And you can see the massive formation, which is why this room is called the Hall of Giants. These are the twins. These started out as tiny stalactites and stalagmites. I mean, that's impressive to me. I mean, you can't even imagine how long this cave has been there. And before, I don't typically do this either, but...
Oh, pretty.
Alright, so now that we briefly got to see this room, as those first explorers did, what do you all think they would say if they got to see this cave the way that we do today?
Oh.
Alright, so as we head out of the cave, I would probably suggest to you sit over on the driver's side. It gets super low over here. We have to swing all the way over here because this formation is the formation that makes the cave pearls. So it's very important that we don't hit it at all. So just if you're gonna soak it, just please watch your heads. As we go out, pay attention or look at the formations coming up. It's really beautiful. Okay, real quick question, because I'm already out of time, but do you guys know the Scooby-Doo cartoons very well?
Yeah.
Yeah? Either one of you?
Watch them.
Okay, well, do you know the little monster he hangs out again, just floats around?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, he lives here. Did you see him?
Yeah.
He's right there. You see him?
Oh, I did.
It's crazy. All right, so we're gonna head on up to the exit, and then when I open the door, I'll show you guys that starfish fossil too. Here we go. All right, honey, once we get about right here, you're going to want to watch your head because it does get low. And don't forget to look over there, your spiral staircase. And watch out for this one, it will give you a migraine. I'm gonna have to pull up a little bit to show you guys that starfish fossil. So you guys can see it back there. Alright, and I'll show you real quick, so you can probably see it better from right here. I don't know if you guys can see it back there. See it?
Oh, yeah.
It's a starfish fossil. I'll pull up a little bit more so you guys can get closer to it. And I'll show you guys.
So what's that? So what's that little
Cage.
cage thing?
Alright, yeah, I'll tap it to you guys. Alright, so as we exit the cave, guys, everybody please watch your heads. It gets low and it's very, very jagged. Alright, here we go. Alright, let me show you guys that original entrance to the cave. It is a tiny little hole right there. You can see it really good since it's cloudy out. But see, he would have only crawled a little bit and then he would have been able to stand up back there. So, but this, as a whole, looked like that over there. It's a lot harder to spot. All right, so thank you guys for coming out. Those photos are yours to take home. Pictures, memories of you guys being here. So I'm gonna pull up under that rain shelter. If you guys will please wait to get off just until I get that step back there for safety reasons, I would appreciate it.
Okay, guys.